Another week of big tournaments has just wrapped up, and I want to take a look at the meta because we have a few surprises here. There's some really cool innovations being done, and what might be the new best deck, or at least the second best deck in the format. I'm going to go through all of the interesting decks, the new innovations being made to previous decks, and I'm also going to show you what does the matchup spread for every deck look like so you can make the most educated pick when going into your ranked endeavors. Real quick before we start, about 68% of you are not subscribed. It's completely free, and it lets my mom brag about her YouTuber son to her coworker, so I would really appreciate it if you guys consider subscribing. All right, let's get on with the video. First deck we got to talk about, whoever made this cooked, okay? This is Greninja Giratina, but with Tapu Lele instead of the Snorlaxes or the Oricorios, whatever. I don't know how I didn't do this first. Okay, this deck was made for me. Tapu Lele, it's going to do 20 damage to one of your opponent's benched or active, whatever, any of their Pokemon. It does 20 damage per each energy card attached to it. What this Tapu Lele allows is essentially, think of any matchup where your opponent has little attackers and they have one big attacker they're trying to power up on the bench. Well, we can now set up for a big Cyrus plus Giratina attack play on it. We don't even need Greninja. We can go through Tapu Lele. If you're up against Darkrai Giratina, while they're charging up their energy, you could be attaching to your Giratina while doing big damage with Tapu Lele. It's not uncommon that Tapu Lele is going to end up taking a knockout against either their Darkrai or Giratina, whichever one you've selected to be punished by Energy Arrow. It is a fantastic deck, and I want to show you the matchup guide, and we'll explain a little bit more about how this deck functions. Okay, now this one, there is not a lot of data available because it kind of just gets lumped in with some other Greninja variants online for these online tournaments. So I'm just going based off of me playing with the deck. What do I think? Right up here in very favored, we have Arceus Carnivine. Dude, it's so free. It's so free. As soon as they bench that Arceus, you are able to bully it either with the Tapu Lele or the Greninja, whatever. Set up for that Cyrus Giratina play on the Arceus, and then Giratina just gets a free knockout on whatever the other Pokemon they send up is. And that's it. It's such a free matchup. It's ridiculous. Slightly favored. I have Darkrai Giratina, Magnezone Oricorio, the Lunala variants, and the Greninja Oricorio list. A lot of the things you're trying to do in these matchups is use Tapu Lele or Greninja to target the big attackers. They're not going to have a really great way to access your bench. We are just playing Psychic Energy. I forgot to mention that during the deck profile. We are just playing Psychic. That's how I like to play it. Which means against any of these other dual energy decks, or like Darkrai Giratina just plays Dark, we can get our Giratina online super fast. So we can always be attacking with Giratina first and taking out the big threat that's in front of us. So you think Greninja Oricorio, they are playing Water and Lightning. They're splitting all of their attachments on their Oricorios and their Greninjas. As soon as that Giratina comes down, you are just able to bully it super hard. And if they don't put that Giratina down, then you can just focus the Greninjas. The Oricorio is not doing a lot of meaningful damage without Greninja pings. Tapu Lele can deal with Oricorio just fine, especially if you have your own Greninja in play. You're doing net 60 damage to it. It's just going to take 2 attacks. You're essentially trading 1-to-1 with the Oricorios for your Tapu Leles. Just a fine matchup. And then Lunala, it's already like an inconsistent deck, and they don't have the damage buff that we have or the access to our bench like we have through Greninjas and Tapu Leles and Cyrus to access those Giratinas that are building up the energy. And then Magnezone Oricorio, you just hunt down the Magnezones and it feels pretty fine. Even we've got the other Tapu Lele variant, Lycanroc Rampardos. Tapu Lele doesn't trade as well into Lycanroc as you would want it to, and since we're not running water energy, it's kind of hard to deal with it. I just put it here as even because it's a little bit tricky for them to set up. We're able to hunt down those Rampardos when they come into play, and then we just have to deal with Lycanrocs, which can be fairly easy. And then Greninja Snorlax. So I've not run into like any Greninja Snorlax, but just from my thought process, we just have to, like, they either bench that Giratina down and allow us to go for a Greninja Cyrus play on it with our own Giratina, or they don't, and then we can just go aggressive with our Giratina, knock out their Snorlax, knock out their Greninja, and they don't have a Giratina set up in time. Unfavored. So these matchups are going to come into play with these big stage 2 decks. Meowscarada does not put a lot of energy into play, so your Tapu Lele is only doing 40 damage a turn. Decidueye is really hard to deal with when that gets set up. Charizard Turtonator, it just gets set up so quickly that it's hard for you to deal with it. It's just hard for you to deal with it, right? If they start Turtonator, it's honestly better, or if they ever bench a Turtonator at any point, you can finesse these guys, right? The Turtonator has a huge retreat cost. Charizard has a huge retreat cost. I won a game earlier against them because they started Turtonator, and then when they evolved into Charizard with no energy on it, I was just able to go Greninja Ping, Cyrus, trap that Charizard, and start doing Tapu Lele damage wherever I wanted on their bench. But it's not often that that's going to happen. As soon as they get that Charizard set up, you're in a really, really scary place. And it's the same with Charizard Incineroar, right? Once they get those stage 2s up and going, you don't have a lot of good ways to deal with them. And you don't have a really good way to deal fast damage. The Tapu Lele is better against these decks that take some time to set up, and not, they can go from 0 energy on board to a 4 energy Charizard that's swinging for 150, and your Tapu Lele got no value. Same story with the Garchomp and the Solgaleo. They're just low energy attackers that can get set up really, really aggressively and start doing good damage, taking big knockouts, and you don't really have a great way to respond. So presently, if the ladder is, remains to stay the way it is with a lot of Arceus Carnivine, a lot of Darker Giratina, a lot of Greninja Oricorio, and Greninja Snorlax, fantastic play for the ladder. I've been farming a lot of points with this deck, but as soon as you start to hit these stage 2 decks on the ladder, things get a little tricky. It might be able to be remedied by you teching in a red card, right? You already play the Mars, but maybe if you throw in a red card there as well, it can help. But I'm not really that convinced because, again, we don't really have anything for quick aggression. Other decks, like Arceus Carnivine, I was running red card Mars in it because I could reset my opponent down and then keep doing 50, 80 with Carnivine plus Crobat, and I could wipe them off the board before they had a chance to set up. But we don't really have a way to run people off the board quickly, so I think that these stage 2 matchups are probably just always going to be a wash. But hopefully the Giratina Darkrai will keep these guys in check and just keep red carding and Marsing them turn after turn, and people will put the decks down and not want to play them. So this is the best performing, most up-to-date Greninja Oricorio. It's very simple. You just stick Oricorio in the active spot. He's going to block a few of the main meta decks. Greninja can also act as a really fast attacker that is great in this meta. You're playing Water and Lightning Energy. The Giratina, you're just going to use him. You're just going to power him up on the bench with that Broken Space Bellow while you have time. Oricorio can buy you that time in some matchups. And then the Shaman's here for some healing. So this is the best performing list. Like I said, it's got a Guzma in here. I love Guzma. I think it's been fantastic. Just getting rid of Rocky Helmets or Giant Capes to fix where my damage is great. Also, Double Cyrus. I mean, so necessary in this deck. I feel like anything playing Greninja should probably be playing Double Cyrus because it's just so powerful. Being able to pick exactly who you bring up is fantastic. And I wish this had been a thing back when Cyrus first came out. I tried a lot with Greninja back in the Space Time Smackdown meta when we first got Cyrus, but it just never really panned out. But now it's finally Greninja's time, and Greninja is really dominating this meta. So let's over to the matchups. Okay, here's the matchup spread. So your favorites are going to be those Charizards and those Darkrai decks. You just completely wall them out. Lunala I'm throwing in here as well. Lunala, I still don't think is a real deck, but we're including it just to include it. Solgaleo, it gets really hard for him. You have both Oricorio and Greninja to deal with the Skarmories, and then after that, it's just about Oricorio walling out the Solgaleo from playing the game, and that's kind of that. Even, we got the Greninja Oricorio, and we have the Giratina Snorlax. I thought this would be, honestly, a worse matchup, but from all the data I'm reading here, it's about 55%, which is just enough for me to put it in even. Arceus Carnivine, also an even matchup. To me, as much as I've played this, it really comes down to who gets their Stage 2 set up first. If you get the Greninja set up, Greninja's going to be taking out those Carnivines. If they get the Crobat set up, Carnivine plus Crobat Ping is going to start taking out your Oricorios, or it's going to have a good time dealing with your, Froakies into Greninjas. It just gets really tough. Your late game play is always Oricorios to wall out that Arceus, and set up for that Giratina at the end of the game just to knock out that final Arceus. But in the beginning of the game, it comes down to who gets their stage 1 out first. Tapu Lele, for the reasons I just talked about in the last deck profile, Tapu Lele is unfavored because they just have a better way at getting at your Giratinas than we do. Garchomp, it's also just tough. Garchomp has a way to deal with Oricorios through Gabite, through Cranidos, through Rampardos. Oricorio is not going to stand in the way of Garchomp all that much, and once they get the Garchomp set up quickly, they are able to bully our Giratina on the bench and things just get really, really rough if they set up quickly. Unfavorable, Meowscarada, Decidueye, it's just, they do more damage than us. They have better heals than us. The Meowscarada is going to be able to get that Giratina knocked out in one hit or close to it. If Giratina attacks, Meowscarada is going to respond to a KO with a KO somehow. It's just a tough matchup. They have a lot of heals for themselves. Magnezone Oricorio, they're just an Oricorio deck that has a better Stage 2 attacker into our Stage 2. Oricorio is going to wall out our Giratina, and their Magnezones are going to one-shot our Greninjas. So it's pretty tough. And Lycanroc Rampardos, they just have fighting stuff. They get that Lycanroc set up quickly. It's going to start knocking out Oricorio's Rapid Fire, and then they have the Rampardos in the back for the end of the game. So if you're running into a lot of fire stuff and Giratina, it is literally free wins. Giratina can be a little bit difficult depending on how they've teched out their list. But if you're playing the matchup right and you're just able to get 2 Oricorio down plus a Greninja to start sniping, you should just win that game if they're not playing any techs and you play it correctly. Charizard and Incineroar just put down 2 Oricorio, and they're kind of lost from there. Charizard Turtonator, I got it in slightly favored because they need kind of a perfect start in order to win. They need to start Turtonator, and they need to start Kiawe. If they don't have those two things, you are probably going to be able to get that Greninja set up fast enough that Greninja is going to be able to deal with that Turtonator, and then it's just all on the Oricorio to win the game from there by blocking out the Charizards. Next up, let's talk about Solgaleo. This was the best performing list. I'm also going to show you another list. Some people seem to think that Solgaleo's not dead. I personally think Solgaleo is dead. I don't really like the deck anymore. It just doesn't seem to perform as well. It gets red card Mars punish like any stage 2, but once you get the Solgaleo set up, it's not going to be able to just kind of win you the game just by having Solgaleo. A very fast Solgaleo is still scary, but the fact that Solgaleo can get Respawn knocked out by a Giratina by them just going Darkrai Ping plus red after Solgaleo's attacked once is really, really brutal. This deck just doesn't seem to be performing as well, and I think it's for good reason. I'll show you this version as well. To Solgaleo Kangaskhan, we didn't see any Solgaleo Snorlax do too well, so I think Solgaleo is just kind of dead at the moment, as sad as it is, because I really, really love the card, but there's just too much in its way. Let's go over the matchups and you'll see why. So here we go. As you can see, it takes only one slightly favored matchup, and that is just from me thinking about it. I haven't played any Solgaleo with this deck because it's not really anywhere. Only has a few even matchups and then a lot of slightly unfavored and unfavored. The Darkrai Giratina matchup is sitting at 24.46% right now. And that being the biggest deck in the meta right now, you do not want that. You do not want that. I cannot steer you far enough away from this deck if I tried. Do not play this deck in ranked. You're not looking for anything, right? You're not excited to hit any matchup here. These even matchups are like, why? It's just a coin flip, man. Play something with a better matchup spread. This Solgaleo deck, I don't got to explain every single one of them because I don't really think it's worth anyone's time. I would just say stay away from Solgaleo right now. It's not doing well in this meta anymore. Okay, let's talk about Arceus Carnivine. Now, this is a deck that just recently popped up. I was very glad to see it. Someone figured out Arceus Carnivine and that it can still keep up in this meta. And it did very, very well this weekend. It had, at the Ursa Day, it had 2 top 8s and then 2 right outside of top 8, like 9th and 10th place. It was performing very, very well this weekend. And for good reason. It's a super, super aggressive deck. The Crobat is going to allow the Arceus to hit for 160 damage max, which is incredible. It's going to one-shot basically anything that matters. And if it somehow doesn't, against one of these Stage 2 decks, you're able to go Carnivine, Crobat, Ping, hit them for 80. They're probably not going to be able to heal off all of that damage, and then Arceus just comes in and cleans up whatever big threat's in front of it. So it is a fantastic deck. This is the best performing list, and then this is the 8th place list, I believe. No, this is the 8th place list. Sorry. This is the best performing list. By the way, you're just playing Grass Energy in this. There's no Dark. You want to be able to attack with Carnivine as soon as you get him every single time. And just a few differences, right? This list opted for the Golbat, and in replacement of some card here that I'm sure I will figure out. It's a little bit out of order. It replaced it for some card. You guys can look at the pictures and decide which one you like more. I personally don't use Golbat. I think Golbat's a waste of space. I'm on the 2 rare candy, 2/2 line for support stage 2s. I don't think we need the stage 1 for our support stage 2. It's just kind of a wasted card slot. So I like playing it like that. Let's head over to the matchup spread. Okay, now take a look at this matchup spread, and this is why this deck is so good right now. It's because you take a lot of even or better matchups, and a lot of the unfavored stuff is, you know, lower play rates decks, or at least was, right? This Tapu Lele deck is very, very scary for it. This might make it go down in play if this deck becomes very, very popular. Garchomp has become more unfavored because I believe they're now off of the fighting type Gibble. I don't see a whole lot of them. And that's because Arceus Carnivine used to just be able to go Carnivine turn 1, knock out Gibble, and then they're left with like a Skull Fossil, or they just lose the game outright because they had no other bench Pokemon. But yeah, it just takes a lot of even to slightly favored matchups, and when matchups are this dead even, it becomes a lot about who is the better player. Like, Giratina Darkrai, to me, feels more even than slightly unfavored, because I have played the deck for so long. I've played against Darkrai Giratina for a while. I know their tricks, and I try to make my list have the best chance against it. You know, I make sure I'm playing a Sabrina. I make sure I'm playing, like, a Guzma in there to get rid of the tools and to get around whatever the active Pokemon is, so I can hopefully start hitting a Darkrai and not a Giratina with my Carnivine. Same thing with the Garchomp. Now that they play the Dragon type Gibble, I think it's much, much more difficult, but I was on Heavy Hand Disruption to just kind of lock them out, make sure that all I had to get through was a Gibble and a Skull Fossil, and my Carnivine could take care of both of those very, very quickly. But yeah, this deck just shines if you're a good player. We'll have to see how popular this Tapu Lele deck becomes to see if it forces Arceus Carnivine's play rate down a bit, because it is a really, really bad matchup. From everything I've played, I am consistently beating Arceus Carnivines on, like, turn 4, like my 4th turn, and that's just because they concede after I hit the Cyrus Giratina play on their Arceus. You know, there's just really no way for them to bring it back after that. It's a very, very tricky matchup for them, but still a great deck as it stands. Okay, next up is Meowscarada Decidueye, and it seems like we are now back on the 1/1/1 line of Decidueye. I like having that because usually you want to use that rare candy for your first Meowscarada, and then having to find the second rare candy plus Decidueye combo at the end of the game is a little bit tricky. Look at this list, man. Red card and Mars in here. You're fighting fire with fire. This deck gets punished by these cards so bad. You're just trying to either, you know, lock your opponent out of the game, depending on what they're playing, or you're trying to keep them from having that red card or Mars of their own while you're crying for help trying to get your board set up. So I quite like this. I like any list that has found the room for Mars/red card. The Giovanni seems pretty good. The Giovanni's going to let the Meowscarada knock out a Darkrai with a giant cape on it. It's going to let you one-shot an Oricorio. The only real damage number you're missing here is a Giratina attacking with a giant cape. You're not going to be able to hit that, but I would assume that that doesn't happen too often in your matches. And even still, by the time a Giratina is attacking, if they haven't been reducing your hand, you've been reducing theirs. They might not find their one of giant cape. Some Darkrai Giratina lists aren't even playing Giant Cape anymore. So really the Giovanni shines against these Oricorio matchups. Just being able to hit a surprise 80 or 90 is pretty good. It also helps a lot in the Tapu Lele matchup because you are able to go Decidueye, Razor Leaf for 80, plus 10 from Giovanni, and knock out a Tapu Lele kind of in a surprising fashion. It's usually quite a big shock whenever a Meowscarada takes a knockout on something I wasn't expecting. So let's head over to the matchups and we'll see how the deck is actually performing in the meta. Okay, so here we have the matchup spread for the heavier Decidueye line variant. So they're split up on Limitless. If they are playing the 1/1/1 Decidueye line, this is the matchup spread we're looking at. It's a little bit different for the 1/1 Decidueye. Kind of just worse across the board. Although on the 1/1 Decidueye, it has the highest win percentage against any deck I've ever seen. Against Garchomp Rampardos, it's a 95%, which is ridiculous. Ridiculous. They have literally never once lost to a Garchomp. They only tied against a Garchomp, which was probably an intentional draw, meaning that they both agreed to tie so they can move forward in the tournament. But this deck, I mean, it's going to prey on the fighting decks. It seems to be doing a great job against Giratina Darkrai despite all of the red card and Mars, and that can probably be done through some clever means. If I was a Meowscarada player, I probably would not be slamming down Research's turn 1s. I would probably be holding that research and just crying for help, letting them get their red card and Mars out of the way, and then hoping on the back end, I draw into one of my 2 researches. I'm able to use that, hopefully find some basics or some evolution pieces and just work from there. You have a little bit of time to set up, and once you're set up, it gets really tricky for them to deal with it. You're doing so much damage to their EXs, especially now that they don't play, what is it? Now that they don't really play Giant Cape, or they just have the 1 Giant Cape, makes it tough for them. You also take some good matchups against the Greninja Oricorio deck and the Tapu Lele. Your worst matchups are the Fire stuff, the Greninja Snorlax, but Greninja Snorlax seems to be going down in play, and it seems slightly favored against, or slightly unfavored against Arceus Carnivine, which also might start to go down in play because of the Tapu Lele. So, kind of, it seems like MagCorio Decidueye headed into a really, really good place in the meta, right? Garchomp does fine against Tapu Lele, Giratina. So there might be an increase in Garchomp. You're going to be able to feast on those. The Darkrai Giratinas aren't going anywhere. You're going to be able to feast on the Tapu Leles. The Oricorios seem to be the more popular variant, and your bad matchups are sort of going down. There's going to be a lot of fire stuff still, but, I mean, when you're taking 3 really good matchups against some, honestly, equally popular decks, like Garchomp is probably just as popular as Charizard variant. So, having those good matchups, it actually seems like a really good play for the ladder right now, and I could be honest, ran into a lot of MagCorio Decidueye today. So, I think that this, if anything, I think it might actually be time for MagCorio Decidueye, which is cool to see because it was sort of in a bad spot last, like the last time we took a look at the meta. So it's nice to see it going up and seemingly taking some pretty good matchups now to the top decks that are being played. All right, here's the best performing Garchomp Rampardos list. Not going to spend too much longer on this, but it seems like everyone in the world took my advice. They saw my video where I said, guys, get off the fighting type Gibbles. We need to go to the dragon types because these Carnivines are eating us alive. And it was correct. All right? It was correct. So the list, other than that, looks pretty much the same as it always has been. Double Lily, Iona, Osiris, and then 1 Pokeball to find the other Gibble, and then 1 Giant Cape is your 1 tool. Let's head over to the matchups, and it's honestly kind of insane, the matchups Garchomp takes. So look at this. This is a big roulette deck. This is a Try to Dodge Grass and Try to Dodge Darkrai Giratina. A lot of these other decks you are very, very favored against now. And then you take some even matchups against, some other stage 2s or just your Garchomp Rampardos. Solgaleo, I don't even know why I have it on here again because I never see it in Master Ball. It's not a real deck anymore. But if you can dodge the Darkrai Giratina, which Darkrai Giratina is a really bad matchup. MagCorio Decidueye, really bad matchups. This is seriously like the most roulette thing I've ever seen. All of these favored matchups are like 60% win percentage or higher. So it really is just, if you're hitting the right matchups, you're going to go far with Garchomp. If you're hitting the wrong matchups, which Giratina, Darkrai, still everywhere. MagCorio Decidueye seems to be on the rise. You're going to be in for a really back and forth sort of climb in your ranked journey. But if you're hitting these favorites, it's just going to be a quick +10, +10, +10, +10. Might go on some win streaks with it. Yeah, seems like a pretty fine play. I don't love Garchomp because I see too much Giratina Darkrai, and I see too much MagCorio Decidueye now, so I'm going to stay away from it. But it's kind of funny that if you hit any of these up here, it's almost like a free win. Best performing Charizard Incineroar list. Now, not a lot of Charizard Incineroars really did all that well. I don't think it's a fantastic deck. Same with Charizard Turtonator. I don't think either of them are really the best plays right now. I don't see any differences between the list, really, besides we have a Sabrina now. I feel like it was, for a time, instead of Sabrina, it was either a Guzma or a Red. But seems like we're on the Sabrina now, and then we have the red card. I believe we usually always had the red card, and I just love having a red card or a Mars. There are times in the game where even if it's not turn 1, you just need a way to reset your opponent's hand. They're running away with it. Their hand is huge. You need a way to bring them back down to 3 just to even have a chance to stay in the game. So I also like the Giant Cape as the tool. I feel like Charizard being boosted up to 200 or Incineroar being boosted up to 200 is really important for a lot of the damage numbers that we see right now. Let's go take a look at the matchups. So the deck does have a couple auto losses. Anything with Oricorio, it's going to really struggle with. The Turtonator one, I'm giving the edge to the Turtonator just because it can be an aggressive attacker. They can go, they're going to be playing red card 2. they're going to be able to red card you and maybe just have a Turtonator in the active spot that's able to work through your Pokemon just a little bit quicker, or even just be a secondary attacker, right? They could work in Turtonator into their own Charizard in some instances, and things just get a little bit tricky for you. Dead even. We've got all of these other stage 2 lines. Giratina Darkrai, another one I was surprised to see, but it makes sense. As soon as you get that Charizard set up, you know, it's only a matter of time of when. They can only Mars and red card you so many times before you finally find that Charizard. Once that Charizard's set up, it's just going to clear this deck, especially with the Lilies and the Giant Cape there. It's going to take the Charizard out of range of anything. Arceus Carnivine, pretty even as well. Again, it's tough. Just depends on if they were able to disrupt your hand and get off to a really fast Carnivine start and just be able to start damaging while you're struggling to find your evolution pieces. We have Lycanroc Rampardos as slightly favored. Makes sense. They're not doing quite enough damage. A Lycanroc plus a Rampardos is going to leave them just short of a knockout if you weaved in a Lily, which isn't hard to find because you play 2 of them. And then you're taking good matchups against Meowscarada and the Lele decks and the Greninja Snorlax. But again, Greninja Snorlax is on the downswing, so it's nice to have that favored matchup, but you're not going to be running into it too much more. Let's talk about Lycanroc Rampardos, and before we go any further, I'm going to warn you against this because the matchup spread does not look good. But this is the best performing Lycanroc Rampardos list. Take a look, take a gander. Seems to be pretty standard. And then we have this cool list that did decent as well. And it's a Lycanroc Rampardos Aerodactyl. So Aerodactyl is going to be able to stop some evolutions from happening. But from what I'm seeing for the matchup spreads, it doesn't really make much of a difference against these evolution decks. It does well against these stage 2 only evolution decks, but those don't really exist all that much anymore. It doesn't even take a good matchup against Garchomp Rampardos, Charizard Incineroar. This just does not seem to be all that great. So here's the matchup spread here. Yes, you're going to do good against the Oricorio variants. Yes, you're going to do fine against the Tapu Lele, but dude, this is not good. Having an unfavored to Darktina, Decidueye, and these fire things right now, not great. Not great. You are just asking to go -10 or -7, depending on what rank you're in, over and over and over, as you just consistently hit these matchups. So I would say steer clear of this deck for now. All right, last deck we're going to look at for matchup spreads, and it's another one that I don't really understand ever playing, and it's Magnezone Oricorio. I just think there are better Oricorio variants. I'm not going to spend too long on it. This is the best performing list, and here's the matchup spread. Yes, you're good against the fire stuff and the Darkrai Giratinas, but so is Greninja Oricorio. Has a much better matchup spread and doesn't take these extremely hard losses to very, very popular decks in the meta right now. Garchomp, Arceus, and Decidueye, Meowscarada, all very, very popular. You really do not want matchups that are this bad on paper against them. Yes, it's going to get you the free wins against the fire and you know, somewhat free win against Darkrai Giratina. It's really closer to even than slightly favored. It's another one I personally would not play while trying to grind ranked. This is Tilly from the future because somehow I forgot to talk about Greninja Snorlax in this video. So Greninja Snorlax, right? Here's the list. We're now on the Illima. This was the second place list. This list actually looks like suspiciously close to mine. This is second place list from the tournament that Godsley put on. It's like 800 players, so really, really respectable showcase. In Ursa, Greninja Snorlax kind of flunked out. It really was not anywhere, but it seems like the best performing list played the Illima, and I really like the Illima. I love being able to just pick up the Snorlax and reset all of that damage, as well as a pivot, because you don't really love it sometimes when the Snorlax is stuck in the active spot and he can't really go anywhere. Here we have the matchup spread for it. Favored is this Decidueye and Magnezone Oricorio stuff. Even are your Greninja Snorlaxes, obviously, Arceus, Carnivine, Lycanroc Rampardos, Solgaleo. Unfavored, I have the Tapu Lele version and the Oricorio. And then unfavored are Charizard stuff, Garchomp stuff, and Giratina Darkrai, which is why I don't really think it's a great play anymore. You're favored into some... Meowscarada is good to be favored into since it does seem to be popping up more and more, but you're taking some really bad unfavored matchups down here at the bottom. Okay, now let's look at some stuff outside of the meta. We're kind of going to rapid fire these. This is Banette, Tapu Lele with Mew and Arceus. Now, this managed to get top 64 at the Ursa Day, I believe. It's a cool deck. Banette is going to prevent your opponent from attaching to their active Pokemon when it attacks. which is nice. You can get some, you could trap some things in the active spot. They're still free to retreat, but not a lot of decks are playing Leaf or X speed. So if you're able to trap something with no energy or just 1 energy on it, sometimes Banette can just get a free knockout against it. Tapu Lele is good for, you know, the reasons we talked about earlier. Tapu Lele is really great at just pinging damage on Pokemon. Because your opponent, you know, they're not going to be building up the active. They're going to be building up the bench. So you can pivot from the Banette into the Tapu Lele and start aggressively hitting that thing on the bench. Team Rocket Grunt is going to let you discard energy from the active in case they got something fully powered up in the active spot. Sometimes that card can just win you the game. If you've already taken a knockout and their attacking threat comes up and you hit a Team Rocket Grunt for enough energy, you might just win the game because you hit enough of them. It's a very, very scary deck. You use the Mew for the genome hacking, and then the Arceus. Both of these are just here as the backup attackers meant to finish off the game. It's a cool list. I don't really think it's all that great, but it is something really interesting and could be fun to play. Now, I want to take a look at this Incineroar list because it seems like people finally got it in their heads that they cannot afford to be greedy with these solo stage 2 decks. A lot of them were on the 2-1-2 lines of the evolution, and that just didn't make sense to me with all the red card and Mars going around. This Incineroar list did pretty fine, and they're running the 2 Torracat. So, hey, you're now not forced to have Incineroar plus Rare Candy in hand just to evolve. You can manually evolve with the Torracat, and then you have the Rare Candy there as well for that burst potential. So, seems like if you're going to play these solo stage 2 decks, you need to be playing the 2-2-2 line, or else you're just never going to get set up. The Town Elder is pretty interesting. It's either going to get you a 3rd Lycan in play if you were attacking with Torracat, or could get you another Torracat to evolve your other bench Lycan if you're having trouble finding the Rare Candy. Just an interesting inclusion. I think more often, you know, 50% of the time it's going to get you that Torracat, and it's not going to feel as great as just getting the Lycan. But having a chance for a 3rd Lycan in the deck is pretty cool. I like this list. I think it's very innovative, and I'm a fan. All right, Lunala Giratina. This is the best performing Lunala Giratina, and they've gone for the Necrozma. So Necrozma is going to be just a nice 120 attacker in the list that is also a basic, so it can get through Oricorios. Giratina would deal with the Oricorios just fine on its own, but maybe if they put a giant cape, you need the Necrozma. And the Necrozma is going to be able to just do, again, 120 damage to something is pretty darn good. Again, not really a list I have all that much respect for. There are just other decks that utilize Giratina better than this one does. Which is sad to see because Lunala is pretty cool, but I'd say, if anything with Giratina, something with Greninja is a better partner. Then we have this Solo Beedrill list. Solo Beedrill still seems to be kicking. Again, it's another deck that I don't really respect. A lot of these off-meta decks I don't really respect, but I just want to show you them because they're something fun to play if you're bored and you have all the cards for. We're still rocking the double Beedrill line. You use the 2 for the Oricorios, or just attacking fast, and then the Beedrill EX in the back. 2 Erica, 2 Leaf Cape. Just a really simple list. Tries to get Beedrill online as aggressively as possible and win the game that way. And then this was a cool list I saw. Charizard Ninetales. So instead of using Turtonator or anything like that, you use a Ninetales as your backup attacker. And it's pretty cool. Turtonator has some problems. It needs Kiawe to get powered up fast. Once it's in the active spot, it's sort of stuck there forever. It has a 4 retreat cost, I believe. So when Turtonator's up there, he's up there. He's not going anywhere. And that can be a problem with all these Tapu Leles going around. But Ninetales, it's got to be able to do the 90. You don't really care that it's discarding energy from itself, because you will be using Charizard's Stoke Attack in order to power itself up. You're probably not going to manually attach to it 5 times like in a Turtonator deck. So, yeah, I think this is a very, very cool list to see. Just a little innovation on the Charizard. I'm not a big fan of the fact that it is a 2-2 line of Charizard. There's no Charmeleon here, but hey, it seemed to have worked for them. So that is going to be it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the meta recap. Let me know what you guys think about the matchup breakdown that we included in this video. Just trying to give you guys the most knowledge possible for your ranked endeavors. And if you guys did enjoy, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. Have a good one.